Provocative title, yes, but it's not clickbait, because it's absolutely true, as this video will explain. On my last non-short YouTube video, I talked about why it is that tariffs are always bad and never good. Towards the end, I was intending on making some references to the pro-tariff noises that were coming out of the United Auto Workers Union in the United States, but at the time I decided against doing so, because even as the entire video to it previous justified the point I would make, I like to stick to one major narrative violating point per video. Speaking of which, if you want more videos where I violate narratives by pointing out things that everyone can understand, even if they don't want to, please like and subscribe. This video is the one where I debunk the naive notion that's developed over the years that labor unions and their demands should be uncritically accepted as being good for the working class. Ironically, this wasn't the standard view 20 years ago, and admittedly, the blind deference to unions that exist in the public perspective now is better than the blind cynicism of the past. But not much better, for left unchecked, it will lead right back to the same place. Anyway, as one might have deduced by my reference to the previous video, criticism I'm about to make here is related to tariffs, though it has greater implications beyond that. I hope that the reports of uncertainty and the stock market shock of the last few days in response to Trump's near-universal tariffs have been education as to why tariffs are a bad thing, and again, you can check out my previous video specifically on tariffs for more detail on that, but in short, the reason why tariffs are terrible is because they are a regressive tax hike, as in a tax that hits lower income people harder than higher income people when it comes to consumer goods, and are an arbitrary tax that raises the cost of inputs to production, which also ultimately raises the prices for consumers and ironically makes domestically produced products less competitive on international markets, before even accounting for retaliatory tariffs, undermining the entire logic behind the tariffs. And the only people who benefit from tariffs are a narrow group who are in a position to hypothetically benefit from a rise in prices, i.e. uncompetitive businesses that'll now face no or weaker foreign competition due to said tariffs. The benefits accrue to their owners, but it might also go to the workers of the firms that these people own, provided that those workers are in a good position to leverage higher wages. Consequently, any benefit of tariffs felt by anyone is essentially theft from everyone else, which is exactly why the United Auto Workers Union and their leader Shawn Fain support the tariffs. They are ready and willing to attempt to benefit from the impoverishment of the rest of the working class, and in doing so they objectively become enemies to it, as much, and even in some sense more, than their own exploitative bosses, because it is a betrayal of the rest of the working class, masked as being pro-working class policy. But it is a dim-witted betrayal, as whether or not the UAW and their leadership is too stupid to realize this, they are not only workers, but consumers. The general increase in prices that will be brought about by these tariffs will eat into their own incomes, never mind the possible dropping of consumption of the very automobiles they make, quite possibly making this attempt at a robbery up screw up on even its own terms. Furthermore, any surplus that might be gained from the tariffs, and those are of debatable existence given the ongoing auto worker layoffs, will only be claimed if workers are able to successfully pressure businesses for them, which will probably mean launching, or at least having the credible capacity to threaten to launch, strikes, something that might well be harder to carry out successfully in the context of an economy weakened by tariffs, and the solidarity weakened by the UAW's betrayal. Speaking of which, moving forward, any and all labor action undertaken by the UAW, as long as they maintain this treacherous position on tariffs, should be scabbed and their picket lines crossed. If any sufficient progress is to be made for the working class in the United States, and honestly anywhere in the world, unions that engage in moves that are detrimental to the working class as a whole need to be disciplined out of it, even if doing so stands against the vulgar and shallow boosterism of all union action regardless of results, so common in the existing progressive movement. The fact that the UAW even takes a position like this is all the evidence one needs to see that the labor movement in the United States is far weaker than it should be. For if it were stronger, their narrow, isolated delusion about their interests would be rectified by interaction with other parts of the labor movement. It is this same type of behavior that has gotten the Teamsters Union to flirt even more directly with the nativist protectionism of Trumpism, which is something important for those not moved by the economic case to consider. Generally speaking, there's been an embarrassing tendency in progressive movements to take the small-minded, short-term tack of trying to protect the little they have within themselves at the expense of their peers, rather than fight for more for all, including themselves, especially when it comes to the realm of new technologies, particularly when it comes to automation, something that's reached quite a bit of a peak this year. For example, a recent deal by the Longshoremen's Union to ban port automation technologies that significantly increase worker productivity in the name of job security, because their preference is, again, to impoverish society as a whole to protect their own short-term interests as they see them. Now, you might have expected me to reference something else when I brought up big things in automation happening this year causing a reactionary response from so-called progressives. But, like I said, I try to stick to one major narrative violating point per video. In this video, I talked about unions acting in ways that are detrimental to the rest of the working class, in the name of narrow, short-sighted protectionism of their interests. I'll talk about the far more unforgivable clamor from fake progressive towards dystopian expansions of copyright regulation that would destroy the open internet such that it exists another time. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, I especially want to see these comments, and subscribe.